Picture this for a moment. You close your eyes tonight, drift into sleep, and for 8 hours, your conscious awareness seems to simply vanish. Yet tomorrow morning, you wake up as the same person, with the same memories, the same sense of self. Where did you go during those hours of unconsciousness? And if consciousness can disappear and return so seamlessly, what does that tell us about the nature of awareness itself? Now imagine stretching that question across a far greater span. Before you were born, before your brain formed, before the first spark of neural activity flickered to life, was there something that could be called consciousness? Or does awareness simply emerge from complexity, like steam rising from boiling water, only to vanish when the heat is turned off? Welcome to a journey into one of the most profound mysteries at the intersection of science and philosophy. I'm here to guide you through questions that have puzzled humanity for millennia, questions that are now being explored through the lens of cutting-edge neuroscience, quantum physics, and consciousness research. We're going to explore the radical possibility that consciousness might not be something that emerges from the brain, but rather something far more fundamental to the fabric of reality itself. Tonight we'll venture into territories where science meets speculation, where ancient wisdom encounters modern physics, and where the boundaries between self and universe begin to blur. This isn't just an academic exercise. Understanding the nature of consciousness before birth might fundamentally change how we see ourselves, our place in the cosmos, and the very nature of existence. Take a deep breath and settle in. Let the weight of your day begin to dissolve as we embark on this contemplative exploration. Whether you're listening from a quiet bedroom, a cozy corner of your home, or anywhere else in the world, you're about to discover ideas that might shift your entire perspective on what it means to be conscious. The question of pre-life consciousness touches something deep within us, something that recognizes the mystery of our own existence. We'll explore cutting-edge theories from Nobel Prize-winning physicists, examine evidence from near-death experiences, and consider philosophical frameworks that suggest consciousness might be as fundamental to the universe as space and time themselves. But first, let's begin with a paradox that sits at the very heart of modern neuroscience. For over a century, scientists have operated under a seemingly logical assumption. Consciousness emerges from the complex interactions of neurons in the brain. Like a symphony arising from the coordinated playing of individual instruments, awareness was thought to be the beautiful but temporary music that emerges when billions of brain cells work together. When the orchestra stops playing, when the brain ceases to function, the music of consciousness presumably ends. This view, known as emergentism, has dominated scientific thinking about consciousness. It suggests that awareness is what philosophers call an emergent property of neural complexity. Just as wetness emerges from H2O molecules but isn't present in individual hydrogen or oxygen atoms, consciousness emerges from neural networks but isn't present in individual brain cells. Yet this seemingly reasonable explanation faces a profound challenge, one that has puzzled scientists and philosophers alike. If consciousness truly emerges only from neural complexity, how do we explain the mounting evidence that awareness might exist in states where the brain shows little to no measurable activity? Consider the paradox of near-death experiences. During cardiac arrest, when the heart stops and blood flow to the brain ceases, conventional neuroscience tells us that consciousness should disappear within seconds. The brain, deprived of oxygen, should produce nothing but the electrical silence of unconsciousness. Yet thousands of people report vivid, coherent, and often life-changing experiences during these moments of clinical death. Dr. Sam Parnia, a leading researcher in this field, has documented cases where patients accurately describe events that occurred during their resuscitation, events they should have been neurologically incapable of perceiving. In a 2023 study involving over 500 cardiac arrest patients, his team found that nearly 40% showed signs of brain activity consistent with consciousness, even during the deepest stages of cardiac arrest, sometimes persisting for up to an hour during CPR. These aren't isolated incidents or anecdotal reports. They represent a systematic challenge to our understanding of the relationship between brain and consciousness. If awareness can persist when the neural orchestra has seemingly fallen silent, what does that tell us about the nature of consciousness itself? As you consider this paradox, notice how it might relate to your own experience of consciousness. Have you ever had moments of awareness that seemed to transcend your normal waking state? Dreams that felt more vivid than reality? Meditative experiences where the boundaries of self seem to dissolve? These glimpses might offer clues to understanding consciousness as something far more fundamental than we've previously imagined. The challenge to conventional neuroscience doesn't end with near-death experiences. Recent discoveries in quantum biology have revealed that quantum effects, once thought to be too delicate to survive in the warm, noisy environment of living tissue, actually play crucial roles in biological processes. Photosynthesis, the process by which plants convert sunlight into energy, appears to use quantum coherence to achieve near-perfect efficiency. Bird navigation systems may rely on quantum entanglement in specialized proteins in their eyes. These discoveries have profound implications for consciousness research. If quantum effects can persist in biological systems, might they also play a role in the emergence of awareness? This possibility has led some scientists to propose radical new theories about the nature of consciousness itself. Nobel laureate Sir Roger Penrose, working with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, has proposed one of the most controversial and fascinating theories in consciousness research. Their orchestrated objective reduction theory, or ORC-OR, suggests that consciousness arises not from the electrical activity of neurons, but from quantum processes occurring within the cellular structures called microtubules. Microtubules are tiny protein cylinders found in all cells, but they're particularly abundant in neurons. Penrose and Hameroff propose that these structures can maintain quantum coherence, allowing them to process information in ways that classical physics cannot explain. In their view, consciousness emerges when quantum states in these microtubules reach a critical threshold and collapse into classical reality through a process they call objective reduction. This theory is highly speculative and remains controversial within the scientific community. However, recent experimental evidence has provided surprising support for some of its key predictions. In 2013, researchers led by Anirban Bandyopadhyay discovered quantum vibrations in microtubules at warm temperatures, something that conventional physics suggested should be impossible. These findings don't prove the ORC-OR theory, but they do suggest that quantum effects in biological systems might be more common and robust than previously thought. The implications of quantum consciousness theories extend far beyond neuroscience. If consciousness truly operates at the quantum level, it might not require the complex neural networks of advanced brains. Instead, awareness might emerge from more fundamental quantum processes that could, in principle, occur in any sufficiently organized system. This possibility opens the door to one of the most radical ideas in consciousness research, that awareness might have preceded life itself. Rather than consciousness emerging from biological evolution, some researchers now propose that proto-conscious processes in the early universe might have provided the organizing principles that made evolution possible in the first place. Take a moment to let that idea settle. Imagine consciousness not as a recent biological innovation, but as a fundamental property of the cosmos, present from the earliest moments of the universe's existence. In this view, the emergence of life and the development of complex brains wouldn't create consciousness, but rather provide increasingly sophisticated ways for pre-existing awareness to express itself. This brings us to an ancient philosophical perspective that's gaining new scientific credibility: panpsychism. This view suggests that consciousness is a fundamental property of reality, present at some level in all matter. Just as mass and electrical charge are properties that particles possess, consciousness might be another basic feature of the physical world. Panpsychism might sound like mystical thinking, but it has attracted serious attention from leading philosophers and scientists. David Chalmers, one of the most respected consciousness researchers, has argued that panpsychism offers a potential solution to what he calls the hard problem of consciousness, the mystery of how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. The hard problem isn't about explaining the functions of consciousness, things like attention, memory, or information processing. Neuroscience has made remarkable progress in understanding these cognitive abilities. The hard problem is explaining why there's something it's like to be conscious, why we have inner experiences at all, rather than simply processing information like sophisticated biological computers. Traditional materialist approaches to consciousness face a fundamental challenge here. They can explain the mechanisms of neural processing, but they struggle to explain why this processing should be accompanied by subjective experience. It's what philosopher David Chalmers has called the explanatory gap between physical processes and phenomenal consciousness. Panpsychism sidesteps this problem by proposing that consciousness is already present at the fundamental level of reality. Rather than trying to explain how consciousness emerges from non-conscious matter, it suggests that consciousness is a basic feature of matter itself. Complex forms of consciousness, like human awareness, would then arise through the combination and integration of simpler conscious elements. This perspective finds support in integrated information theory, or IIT, developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi. IIT proposes that consciousness corresponds to integrated information in a system. Any system that integrates information in the right way possesses some degree of consciousness, regardless of whether it's biological or artificial, simple or complex. According to IIT, even fundamental particles might possess minimal forms of consciousness, though far simpler than human awareness. As systems become more complex and integrate information more effectively, their consciousness becomes richer and more sophisticated. The human brain, with its billions of interconnected neurons, represents one of the most integrated information processing systems we know of, which would explain the richness of human consciousness. The mathematical framework of IIT allows researchers to calculate what they call phi, a measure of how much consciousness a system possesses. While the phi values for fundamental particles would be vanishingly small, they might still be greater than zero, suggesting that even the basic building blocks of reality possess some form of proto-consciousness. These ideas remain highly speculative, and it's important to note that there's no scientific consensus on panpsychism or quantum theories of consciousness. The mainstream scientific view still holds that consciousness emerges from neural complexity, and many researchers remain skeptical of more exotic alternatives. However, the persistent mysteries surrounding consciousness have kept these alternative approaches alive in scientific discourse. As we explore these possibilities, consider how they might change your understanding of your own consciousness. If awareness is truly fundamental to reality, then your consciousness isn't something that emerges and disappears with your brain. Instead, it might be a localized expression of something far more universal, a temporary focusing of awareness that existed long before your birth and might persist in some form beyond your death. This perspective doesn't necessarily imply personal survival after death or reincarnation in any traditional sense. Rather, it suggests that the fundamental capacity for consciousness that manifests as your awareness is woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. Your individual consciousness might be like a wave on the ocean of universal awareness, distinct and temporary, but never truly separates from the deeper reality from which it emerges. The exploration of pre-life consciousness also intersects with research on infant development and the emergence of self-awareness. Recent studies have pushed back the timeline of when consciousness might first appear, suggesting that some form of awareness might emerge during the final months of pregnancy, rather than months after birth as previously thought. This research uses the same neural markers that scientists employ to assess consciousness in adults. Things like the brain's response to unexpected stimuli or the integration of information across different brain regions. When these markers are applied to infants and even late-stage fetuses, they suggest that rudimentary forms of consciousness might emerge much earlier than traditionally believed. The implications extend beyond individual development to questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If awareness can emerge from relatively simple neural networks, it raises questions about what other systems might be capable of conscious experience. The boundary between conscious and non-conscious systems becomes less clear, opening possibilities for consciousness in unexpected places. As we pause here in our exploration, take a breath and reflect on how these ideas resonate with your own experience. Have you ever had moments where your sense of individual consciousness seemed to expand or dissolve into something larger? Perhaps during meditation, in nature, or in moments of deep contemplation. These experiences might offer glimpses into the deeper nature of consciousness that these scientific theories are attempting to understand. The journey we've begun tonight challenges some of our most basic assumptions about the nature of mind and reality. We've explored how consciousness might operate at quantum levels, how it might be fundamental to the universe itself, and how it might have existed long before the emergence of biological life. These are profound possibilities that invite us to reconsider our place in the cosmic story. But exploration has only just begun. In the next part of our journey, we'll delve deeper into the evidence for pre-life consciousness, examining how these theoretical frameworks might explain the mysteries of near-death experiences, the nature of memory and identity, and the possibility that consciousness might extend beyond the boundaries of individual brains. The mysteries we've been exploring lead us to an even more profound question. If consciousness might be fundamental to reality itself, what does that mean for the nature of memory, identity, and the continuity of self? Consider for a moment how your memories seem to persist, even when you're not actively thinking about them. Where do they exist during the hours you sleep, the moments you're focused on other things? This simple question opens doorways to understanding consciousness that extend far beyond individual brains. Recent research in consciousness studies has begun to challenge our assumptions about where memories are stored and how identity persists through time. The traditional view sees memories as neural patterns etched into brain tissue, like grooves on a record. But emerging evidence suggests a far more mysterious picture. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness theories propose that memory might not be entirely localized within individual brains, but could involve non-local quantum processes that transcend the boundaries of single nervous systems. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, though controversial in mainstream science, has proposed the concept of morphic resonance, suggesting that patterns of activity in one system can influence similar systems across space and time. While this remains unproven and lacks scientific consensus, it raises intriguing questions about whether consciousness and memory might operate through fields that extend beyond individual organisms. Could the patterns that constitute your memories be part of a larger informational structure in the universe? This idea finds unexpected resonance with findings from quantum field theory. In the quantum realm, particles don't exist as discrete entities, but as excitations in underlying fields that permeate all of space: the electron field, the photon field, the Higgs field. These invisible substrates give rise to all the particles we observe. Some speculative interpretations suggest that consciousness might operate through similar field-like structures, creating connections that transcend the apparent boundaries between individual minds. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice how they might relate to your own experiences of memory and identity. Have you ever had the strange feeling of remembering something that didn't quite feel like your own memory? Or moments where you seemed to tap into knowledge or insights that felt like they came from beyond your individual experience? These glimpses might offer clues to understanding consciousness as something more distributed and interconnected than we typically imagine. The question of pre-life consciousness becomes even more intriguing when we consider the nature of time itself. Einstein's theories of relativity revealed that time isn't the uniform, flowing river we experience in everyday life. Instead, it's more like a landscape where past, present, and future coexist in what physicists call the block universe. If all moments in time exist simultaneously from a higher dimensional perspective, what does this mean for the temporal boundaries of consciousness? Some interpretations suggest that if consciousness operates at quantum levels, where the normal rules of causality become fuzzy, it might not be strictly confined to the present moment. The quantum realm is characterized by what physicists call non-locality, where events can be instantaneously correlated across vast distances. Could consciousness exhibit similar non-local properties across time as well as space? This remains highly speculative, but it offers a framework for understanding phenomena that seem to transcend ordinary temporal boundaries. Consider the strange experiences some people report of seemingly accessing information about future events, or the uncanny accuracy of certain precognitive dreams. While mainstream science remains skeptical of such claims, the fundamental strangeness of quantum mechanics keeps these possibilities alive in scientific discourse. The exploration of time and consciousness leads us to one of the most fascinating aspects of near-death experiences: the life review. Many people who undergo these experiences report witnessing their entire lives from a perspective that seems to exist outside of normal temporal flow. They describe seeing events from multiple viewpoints simultaneously, understanding the interconnected consequences of their actions across time, and accessing memories that seemed lost to ordinary consciousness. Dr. Kenneth Ring, a pioneering researcher in near-death studies, has documented thousands of cases where people report experiencing what they call panoramic life review. These aren't simply rapid sequences of memories, but rather a holistic understanding of one's entire existence from a perspective that transcends the usual limitations of individual consciousness. The consistency of these reports across different cultures and belief systems suggests they might reveal something fundamental about the nature of consciousness and time. If consciousness can indeed access this kind of non-linear, panoramic perspective, it raises profound questions about the nature of identity and continuity. What if the you that experiences this life review represents a more fundamental aspect of consciousness than the everyday self you identify with? This perspective might exist at a level that transcends the birth and death of individual brains, accessing memories and experiences through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. Take a moment to consider how this might relate to your own sense of identity. When you say, "I remember," what exactly is this I that persists through all the changes in your body and brain over the years? The cells in your body replace themselves completely every 7 years, yet something maintains the continuity of your identity and memories. This persistent sense of self might point toward aspects of consciousness that operate beyond the physical substrate of individual brains. The investigation of consciousness beyond individual boundaries leads us to examine what researchers call shared death experiences. These are cases where people who are not dying themselves report experiencing aspects of another person's death, often including elements similar to near-death experiences. Dr. Raymond Moody, who first coined the term near-death experience, has documented numerous cases where family members or caregivers report shared visions, out-of-body experiences, or other phenomena during a loved one's death. These shared experiences challenge our assumptions about the individual nature of consciousness. If awareness was strictly confined to individual brains, such shared phenomena should be impossible consistency in them. Yet the emotional impact of these reports suggests they might reveal something important about the interconnected nature of consciousness itself. The phenomenon extends beyond death-related experiences to include various forms of what researchers call anomalous shared experiences. These include cases of apparent telepathic communication, shared dreams, and synchronized mystical experiences between individuals who are physically separated. While mainstream science remains cautious about such claims, the persistence and consistency of these reports across cultures and time periods suggests they might point toward aspects of consciousness that we don't yet fully understand. Consider your own relationships with close friends or family members. Have you ever experienced moments of seeming telepathic connection, where you knew what someone was thinking before they spoke, or where you both experienced similar insights or emotions simultaneously? While these experiences might have conventional explanations, they could also offer glimpses into the more interconnected nature of consciousness that these theories propose. The exploration of shared consciousness phenomena brings us to research on what scientists call collective consciousness, or group mind effects. The Global Consciousness Project, initiated by researcher Dean Radin, has been monitoring random number generators around the world for over 2 decades, looking for patterns that might correlate with major global events or collective human experiences. The project's findings suggest that during moments of intense collective focus, such as during the September 11th attacks or major natural disasters, the random number generators show subtle but statistically significant deviations from true randomness. While these effects are small, and their interpretation remains controversial, they raise intriguing questions about whether human consciousness might have subtle influences that extend beyond individual minds. This research remains on the frontier of scientific investigation, and no scientific consensus exists about the reality or interpretation of these effects. However, they illustrate how seriously some researchers are taking the possibility that consciousness might operate through mechanisms that transcend individual brains. If consciousness truly is fundamental to reality, as panpsychist theories suggest, then collective consciousness effects might be natural consequences of the interconnected nature of awareness itself. The implications extend to understanding how consciousness might operate at different scales of organization. Just as individual neurons give rise to complex brain-wide patterns, and individual brains contribute to social and cultural patterns, consciousness might operate at multiple levels simultaneously. Your individual awareness might be nested within larger patterns of consciousness that encompass communities, ecosystems, and perhaps even planetary or cosmic scales of organization. As you reflect on these ideas, notice how they might change your understanding of your relationship to the world around you. If consciousness truly operates at multiple interconnected levels, then your individual awareness isn't separate from the larger patterns of consciousness in your community and environment. Your thoughts, emotions, and experiences might be part of a larger tapestry of awareness that extends far beyond the boundaries of your individual mind. This perspective finds support in research on how meditation and contemplative practices seem to enhance people's sense of interconnectedness with others and with nature. Long-term meditators often report a decreased sense of separation between self and world, and neuroscience research has shown that meditation can alter brain networks associated with self-referential thinking and emotional regulation. The changes associated with contemplative practice might not simply be subjective shifts in perspective, but could represent a more accurate perception of the fundamentally interconnected nature of consciousness itself. When meditators report experiencing unity or oneness, they might be accessing aspects of consciousness that are normally obscured by the focused, individualistic perspective of ordinary waking awareness. These insights bring us back to the question of pre-life consciousness with new depth and nuance. If consciousness operates at multiple levels and scales, if it involves field-like properties that transcend individual brains, and if it might be fundamental to the fabric of reality itself, then the consciousness that manifests as your individual awareness might be a temporary focusing of something far more universal and enduring. This doesn't necessarily imply personal survival after death in any traditional sense. Rather, it suggests that the capacity for consciousness that manifests through your individual awareness is woven into the very structure of the cosmos. Your personal consciousness might be like a melody played by a cosmic orchestra, distinct and beautiful, but never separate from the larger symphony of which it's part. The melody of your individual awareness might emerge from patterns that existed long before your birth and might contribute to patterns that persist long after your death. Just as a wave on the ocean arises from the water and returns to the water while never being separate from it, your consciousness might emerge from and return to a deeper ground of awareness that permeates all of reality. As we pause here in our exploration, take a breath and feel yourself settling more deeply into these contemplations. We've journeyed through territories where the boundaries between individual and universal consciousness begin to dissolve, where time reveals itself as more fluid than everyday experience suggests, and where the nature of memory and identity point toward aspects of awareness that transcend individual brains. The ideas we're exploring challenge some of our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of self and reality. They invite us to consider consciousness not as something that emerges temporarily from complex matter, but as something fundamental that might have existed before the formation of the first atoms and might persist long after the last star burns out. Our exploration continues to unfold like the gradual dawn of understanding, revealing landscapes of possibility that stretch beyond the horizons of conventional thinking. In the next phase of our journey, we'll delve even deeper into the practical implications of these ideas, examining how they might inform our understanding of life, death, and the cosmic context of human existence. The investigations into consciousness across cosmic scales bring us to one of the most profound questions in all of science. How does awareness relate to the fundamental structure of the universe itself? Recent discoveries in cosmology have revealed that the cosmos appears to be far more interconnected than anyone imagined. Dark matter and dark energy, which together comprise roughly 95% of everything that exists, remain largely mysterious to us. Yet they seem to govern the large-scale behavior of galaxies and the expansion of space itself. Some speculative interpretations suggest that these mysterious components of reality might be related to information processing or even proto-conscious phenomena operating at cosmic scales. While this remains unproven and represents the frontier of theoretical speculation rather than established science, it raises fascinating questions about whether the universe itself might possess organizing principles that transcend our current understanding of purely mechanical processes. Consider the remarkable fine-tuning of physical constants that allows for the existence of stable atoms, stars, and ultimately life itself. If the strength of the electromagnetic force was slightly different, or if the mass of the proton varied by even a tiny percentage, the universe would be incapable of supporting the complex structures we observe. Some researchers have wondered whether this fine-tuning might reflect deeper organizing principles that operate beyond random chance or necessity. The anthropic principle, which notes that we observe a universe capable of supporting observers because we exist to observe it, provides one conventional explanation. But some interpretations of quantum mechanics and consciousness research suggest more intriguing possibilities. If consciousness truly operates at quantum levels and involves non-local connections, it might play a role in the apparent fine-tuning of cosmic parameters through mechanisms we're only beginning to imagine. As you contemplate these cosmic scales, notice how they might shift your perspective on your own existence. If consciousness operates through principles that extend from quantum to cosmic levels, then your individual awareness might be connected to the deepest structures of reality itself. Your capacity for thought, feeling, and experience might reflect universal principles that have been operating since the earliest moments of cosmic history. The exploration of consciousness at cosmic scales intersects with research on what scientists call emergence, the way complex properties arise from simpler components. Just as wetness emerges from H2O molecules that individually have no wetness, consciousness might emerge from quantum processes that individually show no awareness. But emergence in quantum systems often involves surprising non-linear effects where the whole becomes genuinely more than the sum of its parts. In quantum mechanics, systems can exhibit what physicists call quantum coherence, where particles remain connected in ways that transcend classical physics. When quantum systems reach sufficient complexity, they can maintain coherence across surprisingly large scales and time periods. Recent research has shown quantum effects persisting in biological systems at body temperature, something that was thought impossible just decades ago. These discoveries suggest that the boundary between quantum and classical worlds might be far more fluid than previously believed. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, as some theories propose, it might naturally exhibit properties that seem mysterious from a classical perspective. Things like non-locality, temporal flexibility, and the ability to access information through channels that don't follow ordinary cause and effect relationships. The implications extend to understanding how consciousness might have evolved not just on Earth, but potentially throughout the universe. The same quantum processes that might underlie awareness in human brains could, in principle, arise in any sufficiently complex system capable of maintaining quantum coherence. This raises profound questions about whether consciousness might be a natural consequence of cosmic evolution rather than a rare accident that occurred only on our planet. Take a moment to breathe deeply and consider how this perspective might change your understanding of your place in the cosmos. If consciousness truly reflects universal principles, then your awareness isn't an isolated phenomenon that emerged randomly on a small planet, but rather a local expression of something woven into the very fabric of reality. You might be part of a cosmic awakening that has been unfolding for billions of years. The search for consciousness beyond Earth has taken on new urgency with recent discoveries of potentially habitable exoplanets and the detection of organic molecules in interstellar space. The James Webb Space Telescope and other advanced instruments are revealing that the building blocks of life are far more common in the universe than previously thought. But if consciousness operates through quantum processes that don't require biological complexity, awareness might arise through pathways we haven't yet imagined. Some researchers have speculated about the possibility of consciousness existing in plasma formations around stars, in the quantum vacuum of seemingly empty space, or even in the information processing networks that might emerge from dark matter interactions. While these ideas remain highly speculative and lack scientific consensus, they illustrate how seriously some scientists are taking the possibility that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of cosmic evolution. The investigation of cosmic consciousness brings us back to near-death experiences with fresh perspective. Many people who undergo these experiences report encountering what they describe as universal or cosmic consciousness, a form of awareness that seems to encompass all of existence simultaneously. They often describe this not as meeting a separate entity, but as recognizing their own deepest nature as part of a universal field of awareness. Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who underwent his own profound near-death experience during a coma caused by bacterial meningitis, describes encountering what he calls the core, a realm of pure love and consciousness that seem to be the source from which all individual awareness emerges. While such accounts remain subjective and cannot be verified through conventional scientific methods, their consistency across cultures and belief systems suggests they might reveal something important about the nature of consciousness itself. These experiences often involve what researchers call encounters with deceased relatives or beings of light, but many experiencers report that these encounters felt less like meeting separate individuals and more like recognizing different aspects of a unified field of consciousness. This perspective aligns with theoretical frameworks that suggest individual consciousness might be temporary focal points in a larger pattern of cosmic awareness. As you reflect on these possibilities, consider how they might inform your understanding of relationships and connection in everyday life. If consciousness truly operates through interconnected fields that transcend individual brains, then the love you feel for others, the empathy that arises naturally in human relationships, and the sense of connection you experience with nature might reflect the fundamental interconnected structure of reality itself. The exploration of interconnected consciousness leads us to examine research on what scientists call morphic fields, hypothetical organizing principles that might influence the development and behavior of living systems. While this concept remains controversial and lacks widespread scientific acceptance, it raises intriguing questions about how patterns of organization might propagate across space and time through mechanisms beyond ordinary physical causation. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake has proposed that these morphic fields might explain phenomena like the rapid spread of new behaviors in animal populations, the way crystals seem to form more easily once similar crystals have formed elsewhere, and even the persistence of cultural patterns across generations. While mainstream science remains skeptical, some researchers have found intriguing correlations that deserve further investigation. The concept of morphic fields suggests that consciousness might operate through field-like structures that carry information about patterns of organization. If such fields exist, they might provide a mechanism for understanding how consciousness could persist across the apparent boundaries of individual lifetimes. Rather than being created anew with each birth, individual consciousness might represent a temporary focusing of pre-existing patterns in these hypothetical consciousness fields. This brings us to one of the most profound implications of pre-life consciousness theories: the possibility that death might not represent the complete cessation of awareness, but rather a transition to different modes of consciousness organization. This doesn't necessarily imply personal survival in any traditional sense, but it suggests that the capacity for consciousness that manifests through individual awareness might be more enduring than the physical structures through which it currently expresses itself. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness theories suggest that the information patterns that constitute individual awareness might persist in quantum fields even after the biological structures that support them have decomposed. This remains highly speculative and represents frontier thinking rather than established science, but it offers a framework for understanding consciousness that bridges scientific and spiritual perspectives on the nature of existence. Consider how this might relate to your own experiences of memory and identity, the thoughts you're having right now, the memories that define your sense of self, the patterns of consciousness that make you who you are. These might be expressions of information structures that transcend the temporary biological systems through which they currently manifest. Your consciousness might be like a song that can be played on different instruments, maintaining its essential identity while adapting to different forms of expression. The investigation of consciousness beyond individual boundaries brings us to research on collective intelligence and group consciousness phenomena. Studies of animal behavior have revealed remarkable examples of collective decision-making in systems ranging from ant colonies to flocks of birds. These collective behaviors often exhibit intelligence and problem-solving capabilities that exceed what individual members of the group could achieve alone. Recent research has begun to examine whether similar collective intelligence phenomena might operate in human groups. Studies of online communities, collaborative problem-solving, and group creativity have revealed that under certain conditions, groups can exhibit cognitive abilities that transcend the sum of individual contributions. While these effects can often be explained through conventional information-sharing mechanisms, some researchers have wondered whether they might also involve subtler forms of consciousness coordination. The possibility of human collective consciousness remains speculative and lacks scientific consensus, but it raises fascinating questions about the and cultural dimensions of awareness. If consciousness social operates through interconnected fields, as some theories suggest, then the thoughts, emotions, and insights that arise in individual minds might be influenced by and contribute to larger patterns of collective awareness. As you sit quietly and contemplate these ideas, notice how they might change your understanding of your relationship to the communities and cultures of which you're part. Your individual thoughts and insights might not emerge in isolation, but could be part of larger patterns of collective exploration and discovery. The questions you ask, the problems you ponder, the creative solutions that occur to you might reflect the collective intelligence of our species working through countless individual minds. This perspective finds support in the history of scientific discovery, where similar insights often arise simultaneously in different researchers working independently. The phenomenon of simultaneous discovery, where multiple people arrive at the same breakthrough at roughly the same time, has been documented throughout the history of human knowledge. While this could result from shared access to similar information and cultural influences, some researchers have wondered whether it might also reflect subtler forms of collective consciousness coordination. The exploration of collective consciousness brings us to examine how contemplative practices might enhance our ability to access these deeper patterns of awareness. Meditation, prayer, and other forms of spiritual practice have been shown to alter brain activity in ways that reduce self-referential thinking and enhance feelings of connection with others and with nature. Long-term practitioners often report experiences of consciousness that seem to transcend individual boundaries. Neuroscience research has revealed that these subjective reports correspond to measurable changes in brain networks associated with the sense of self and the perception of boundaries between self and world. The default mode network, which is active during self-referential thinking, shows decreased activity during deep meditative states. Meanwhile, networks associated with present moment awareness and emotional regulation show enhanced activity and connectivity. These changes might not simply represent altered brain states, but could reflect a more accurate perception of the fundamentally interconnected nature of consciousness itself. When experienced meditators report feeling unity with all existence, they might be accessing aspects of consciousness that are normally obscured by the focused, individualistic perspective of ordinary waking awareness. Take a slow, deep breath and allow yourself to settle even more deeply into this contemplation. Notice how your awareness naturally expands when you're not effortfully focusing on any particular object or thought. This natural expansiveness of consciousness might offer a glimpse into its more fundamental nature, not as something confined within the boundaries of individual minds, but as a field-like phenomenon that individual brains temporarily focus and organize. The investigation of expanded consciousness brings us back to the question of pre-life awareness with deeper understanding. If consciousness truly operates through field-like structures that transcend individual brains, if it involves quantum processes that connect across space and time, and if it represents a fundamental property of cosmic evolution, then the consciousness that manifests as your individual awareness might be a temporary focusing of something far more universal and enduring. This doesn't necessarily mean that your personal memories and individual identity persist after death in any conventional sense. Rather, it suggests that the capacity for consciousness itself, the fundamental ability to experience, to be aware, to feel the texture of existence, might be woven into the very fabric of reality. Your individual consciousness might be like a wave on an infinite ocean, distinct in its form and movement, but never separate from the vast depths from which it emerges and to which it returns. The wave metaphor illuminates something crucial about the relationship between individual and universal consciousness. A wave has its own identity, its own pattern of movement, its own unique interaction with the shoreline, yet it's never separate from the ocean that gives it form. When the wave subsides, it doesn't disappear, it returns to the larger body of water from which it arose, contributing its movement and energy to the endless dance of the sea. Similarly, your individual consciousness might represent a temporary organization of universal awareness, distinct in its patterns of memory, personality, and experience, but fundamentally inseparable from the cosmic field of consciousness from which it emerges. The thoughts you think, the love you feel, the insights you discover might all be expressions of universal consciousness, exploring itself through the unique perspective of your individual awareness. This understanding transforms the question of what existed before you were born. Rather than asking whether your specific individual consciousness existed before your brain formed, we might ask what universal principles of awareness were present in the cosmos long before biological life emerged. The capacity for consciousness itself might be as fundamental to reality as the laws of physics, expressing itself through countless forms across the vast expanses of space and time. As we pause here in our exploration, allow yourself to rest in the profound mystery these ideas reveal. The nature of consciousness remains one of the deepest puzzles in all of science and philosophy, and the questions we are exploring push against the very boundaries of human understanding. Yet in that pushing, in that willingness to contemplate the impossible, we might discover truths about our own nature that are more beautiful and interconnected than anything we previously imagined. The implications of these investigations extend far beyond academic philosophy into the most practical questions of how we live, how we relate to others, and how we understand our place in the cosmic story. If consciousness truly transcends individual boundaries, if it operates through principles that connect us to the deepest structures of reality, then every moment of awareness becomes an opportunity to participate in the universe's ongoing exploration of itself. The journey we're embarking on now takes us into territories where the most profound questions about consciousness intersect with the mysteries of quantum mechanics and the nature of reality itself. As you settle deeper into this exploration, we're going to examine how recent discoveries at the frontiers of science might illuminate the ancient question of what existed before birth. One of the most intriguing developments in consciousness research involves the study of what scientists call quantum coherence in biological systems. For decades, physicists assumed that quantum effects could only persist in the isolated, ultra-cold conditions of laboratory experiments. The warm, noisy environment of living tissue seemed far too chaotic to maintain the delicate quantum states that exhibit such mysterious properties, yet recent discoveries have shattered this assumption. Researchers have found quantum coherence operating in photosynthesis, the fundamental process by which plants convert sunlight into energy. The efficiency of this process appears to rely on quantum effects that allow energy to explore multiple pathways simultaneously before settling on the most efficient route. It's as if nature has learned to harness the strange properties of quantum mechanics to achieve near-perfect energy transfer. This discovery opened the door to investigating quantum effects in other biological processes, including those that might be related to consciousness itself. Some interpretations suggest that if quantum coherence can persist in the warm, wet environment of living cells, it might also play a role in the neural processes that give rise to awareness. Take a moment to consider what this might mean for understanding consciousness. If awareness does indeed operate through quantum processes, it would possess properties that transcend the classical physics of everyday experience. Quantum systems can exist in states of superposition, where they explore multiple possibilities simultaneously before collapsing into definite outcomes. They can exhibit non-locality, where distant parts of a system remain mysteriously connected. And they can demonstrate what physicists call quantum entanglement, where the measurement of one part of a system instantaneously affects other parts, regardless of the distance separating them. These quantum properties remain some of the most puzzling aspects of modern physics, and their potential relationship to consciousness represents one of the most speculative areas of scientific inquiry. It's important to emphasize that no scientific consensus exists about whether consciousness truly operates through quantum mechanisms, and many researchers remain skeptical of such proposals. However, the persistent mysteries surrounding both quantum mechanics and consciousness have kept these possibilities alive in scientific discourse. The implications of quantum consciousness theories extend far beyond neuroscience into fundamental questions about the nature of time, causality, and the relationship between mind and reality. In the quantum realm, the future can influence the past through what physicists call retrocausality, and observation plays a fundamental role in determining the properties of physical systems. Some speculative interpretations suggest that if consciousness operates at quantum levels, it might not be strictly bound by the linear flow of time that characterizes our everyday experience. This remains unproven and represents frontier thinking rather than established science, but it offers a framework for understanding phenomena that seem to transcend ordinary temporal boundaries. Consider the strange experiences that some people report of accessing information that seems to come from beyond their individual knowledge or temporal perspective. While mainstream science remains cautious about such claims, the fundamental strangeness of quantum mechanics keeps these possibilities within the realm of theoretical speculation. The exploration of quantum consciousness brings us to examine one of the most profound questions in modern physics: the measurement problem. In quantum mechanics, systems exist in states of superposition until they are measured or observed, at which point they collapse into definite outcomes. This raises deep questions about the role of consciousness in physical reality. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, such as the consciousness causes collapse interpretation, suggest that conscious observation plays a role in the collapse of the wave function, fundamental role in determining physical reality. However, this remains highly controversial, and most physicists favour interpretations that don't require conscious observers to collapse quantum states. Nevertheless, the relationship between consciousness and quantum measurement continues to generate fascinating research and philosophical speculation. As you reflect on these ideas, notice how they might shift your understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. The classical view sees consciousness as emerging from complex arrangements of matter, like software running on biological hardware. But quantum interpretation suggests the possibility of a more intimate relationship, where consciousness might be woven into the very fabric of physical reality itself. This brings us to explore one of the most revolutionary ideas in consciousness research: the possibility that awareness preceded the emergence of biological life. Rather than consciousness evolving as a late addition to an unconscious universe, some researchers now propose that proto-conscious processes might have been present from the earliest moments of cosmic history. The theoretical framework for this possibility comes from combining quantum consciousness theories with cosmological models of the early universe. In the first moments after the Big Bang, the entire cosmos existed in a state of quantum superposition, with all possibilities coexisting simultaneously. As the universe expanded and cooled, this quantum coherence began to break down through a process called decoherence, leading to the classical reality we observe today. Some interpretations suggest that during this period of cosmic quantum coherence, the fundamental building blocks of consciousness might have emerged alongside the basic particles and forces that constitute physical reality. This is a speculative idea, not a proven scientific fact, but it offers a radically different perspective on the relationship between consciousness and cosmic evolution. If consciousness truly emerged during the earliest epochs of cosmic history, it would mean that awareness is not a recent biological innovation, but rather a fundamental feature of the universe itself. The capacity for experience, for subjective awareness, for the felt sense of existence might be woven into the very structure of space and time. Take a breath here and allow yourself to contemplate what this might mean for your own existence. If consciousness truly precedes biological life, then your individual awareness might be a temporary focusing of something far more ancient and universal than you previously imagined. The thoughts you're thinking right now, the sense of being present in this moment, might be expressions of principles that have been operating since the dawn of time itself. This perspective finds support in philosophical frameworks that have ancient roots but are gaining new scientific credibility. The idea that consciousness is fundamental to reality rather than emergent from complexity appears in various forms across different cultures and time periods. Ancient Hindu philosophy speaks of consciousness as the ground of all being. Buddhist traditions describe awareness as the unchanging backdrop against which all experience unfolds. Indigenous cultures often view consciousness as a property shared by all aspects of nature. These wisdom traditions might have intuited something about the nature of reality that modern science is only beginning to rediscover through its investigations into quantum mechanics and consciousness research. The convergence of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science creates a fascinating dialogue about the fundamental nature of existence itself. The investigation of pre-life consciousness also intersects with research on what happens to awareness during states where normal brain function is severely compromised. Studies of people under general anesthesia have revealed that consciousness doesn't simply switch off like a light, but rather transitions through various stages of diminished awareness. Anesthesiologist Dr. Stuart Hameroff has conducted extensive research on how anesthetic agents affect consciousness, and his findings have important implications for understanding the nature of awareness itself. Some anesthetics appear to work by disrupting quantum processes in cellular structures called microtubules, which Hameroff and his colleagues propose might be the seat of consciousness. This research remains controversial and lacks scientific consensus, but it raises intriguing questions about the relationship between quantum processes and conscious experience. If consciousness truly operates through quantum mechanisms that can be selectively disrupted, it might explain how awareness can persist in states where classical brain function appears severely compromised. The implications extend to understanding what might happen to consciousness during the process of dying. Rather than simply ceasing when brain function stops, some interpretations suggest that consciousness might transition to different modes of organization that don't depend on biological neural networks. This remains highly speculative, but it offers a framework for understanding the coherent experiences that many people report during clinical death. As you consider these possibilities, reflect on how they might inform your understanding of the continuity of consciousness throughout different states of awareness. From deep sleep to waking consciousness, from meditation to ordinary thinking, your awareness seems to maintain some essential continuity even as its contents and intensity vary dramatically. This continuity might point toward aspects of consciousness that operate at levels more fundamental than the specific neural patterns associated with particular thoughts or experiences. Your core sense of being aware, of existing as a conscious entity, might reflect properties of consciousness that transcend the temporary biological structures through which they currently express themselves. The exploration of consciousness continuity brings us to examine research on what scientists call default mode network activity in the brain. This network of brain regions remains active during rest and introspection, and it appears to be associated with the sense of self and the feeling of being a continuous, conscious entity over time. Interestingly, studies of experienced meditators have shown that long-term contemplative practice can alter default mode network activity in ways that correspond to reported changes in the sense of self. Practitioners often describe a decreased identification with the thinking mind and an increased sense of awareness as a more fundamental aspect of their being. These changes might not simply represent altered subjective experiences, but could reflect a more accurate perception of the nature of consciousness itself. When experienced meditators report that awareness is more fundamental than thought, they might be accessing aspects of consciousness that operate at levels deeper than the narrative self-construction that characterizes ordinary waking experience. The investigation of contemplative states provides important insights into the question of pre-life consciousness. If awareness can be experienced as something more fundamental than thought, memory, and personal identity, then it might represent an aspect of consciousness that doesn't depend on the specific biological and psychological structures that define individual human existence. This doesn't necessarily mean that individual consciousness persists after death, but it suggests that the fundamental capacity for awareness itself might transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes. Your personal consciousness might be a temporary organization of more universal principles of awareness that existed before your birth and might persist in some form beyond your death. Take a moment to breathe deeply and notice the quality of awareness itself, independent of any particular content. Right now, beneath all your thoughts, memories, and sensations, there's a simple sense of being present, of being aware. This pure awareness doesn't seem to have age or history in the way your thoughts and memories do. It simply is, timelessly present in every moment of conscious experience. This timeless quality of awareness might offer a clue to understanding consciousness as something that transcends the temporal boundaries of individual existence. Rather than being created anew with each birth, individual consciousness might represent a temporary focusing of awareness that has no ultimate beginning or end. The exploration of timeless awareness brings us to examine how consciousness might relate to the fundamental structure of time itself. Einstein's theories revealed that time is not the uniform, flowing river of common experience, but rather a dimension that can stretch, compress, and curve depending on motion and gravity. At quantum levels, the relationship between past, present, and future becomes even more mysterious. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that all moments in time might coexist simultaneously from a higher dimensional perspective. If consciousness operates at quantum levels, it might have access to this timeless perspective, explaining phenomena like precognitive experiences, synchronicities, and the life review reported in near-death experiences. These ideas remain highly speculative and represent the frontier of theoretical thinking rather than established science. However, they illustrate how seriously some researchers are taking the possibility that consciousness might operate through principles that transcend the ordinary constraints of time and causality. As you contemplate these temporal mysteries, consider how they might relate to your own experiences of time and memory. Have you ever had moments where time seemed to slow down or speed up dramatically? Dreams where past, present, and future seem to blur together? Meditative experiences where the usual sense of temporal flow dissolved into an eternal present moment? These glimpses might offer windows into the more fundamental nature of consciousness and its relationship to time. Rather than being strictly confined to the present moment, awareness might naturally have access to broader temporal perspectives that are usually filtered out by the focusing mechanisms of ordinary waking consciousness. The investigation of consciousness and temporality leads us to explore one of the most profound implications of pre-life consciousness theories: the possibility that individual awareness might be part of a larger cosmic process of awakening. If consciousness truly is fundamental to reality, then the emergence of self-aware beings, like humans, might represent the universe becoming conscious of itself through countless individual perspectives. This idea appears in various forms across different scientific and philosophical traditions. Cosmologist Brian Swimmer has described cosmic evolution as a process of increasing complexity and consciousness. Philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin proposed that evolution tends toward greater consciousness and complexity, culminating in what he called the omega point of universal awakening. While these remain philosophical speculations rather than proven scientific theories, they offer compelling frameworks for understanding individual consciousness as part of a larger cosmic story. Your individual awareness might not be an isolated accident in an unconscious universe, but rather a unique perspective through which the cosmos explores and understands itself. This perspective transforms questions about the meaning and purpose of individual existence. Rather than seeking purpose in external achievements or social recognition, you might find deeper meaning in participating consciously in the universe's ongoing process of self-discovery. Every moment of awareness, every insight, every experience of beauty or love might contribute to the cosmic awakening that has been unfolding for billions of years. As we approach the culmination of our exploration, take a moment to feel how these ideas resonate in your own direct experience. Notice the quality of awareness that has been present throughout this entire contemplation, the constant background of consciousness against which all thoughts, emotions, and insights have appeared and dissolved. This awareness doesn't seem to be produced by your brain in the way that thoughts are produced. It's more like the space in which all mental activity occurs, the knowing presence that makes experience possible. This pure awareness might be your most direct contact with the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The recognition of awareness as the ground of experience points toward perhaps the most profound implication of pre-life consciousness research, that what you most fundamentally are might not be the collection of thoughts, memories, and personality traits you usually identify with, but rather the awareness in which all these experiences appear. This awareness doesn't seem to have been born and doesn't seem destined to die. It simply is, timelessly present, the unchanging witness of all changing experience. If this awareness truly represents your deepest nature, then the question of what existed before you were born takes on entirely new meaning. Rather than asking whether your personal consciousness existed before your brain formed, you might ask whether the awareness that you most fundamentally are has ever not existed. And in that questioning, in that direct investigation of the nature of your own consciousness, you might discover something that has been present all along, something that connects you to the deepest mysteries of existence itself. The scientific investigation of consciousness continues to evolve, pushing against the boundaries of our understanding and opening new possibilities for comprehending the nature of awareness. Whether through quantum theories of consciousness, research on near-death experiences, or the philosophical frameworks of panpsychism, scientists and philosophers are exploring territories that would have been considered impossible just decades ago. These investigations remain at the frontiers of human knowledge, and many questions remain unanswered. The nature of consciousness, its relationship to physical reality, and the possibility of awareness existing before biological life all represent open areas of scientific inquiry rather than settled conclusions. Yet in this very uncertainty, in this willingness to explore the impossible, we find something beautiful about human consciousness itself. The capacity to ask questions that stretch beyond the boundaries of current knowledge, to contemplate mysteries that may never be fully solved, to find wonder in the very fact of being aware. These might be among the most remarkable expressions of consciousness in the known universe. As our journey through these profound mysteries draws toward a close, you might find yourself with more questions than answers, and that's exactly as it should be. The investigation of consciousness, whether in scientific laboratories or in the quiet depths of contemplative inquiry, reveals that awareness itself is far more mysterious and wonderful than we previously imagined. The possibility that consciousness preceded life, that awareness is fundamental to reality, that your individual consciousness might be a temporary focusing of something universal and eternal. These ideas invite you to see yourself and your place in the cosmos in radically new ways. They suggest that you're not an isolated accident in an unconscious universe, but rather an integral part of a cosmic awakening that has been unfolding since the beginning of time. Whether these scientific theories prove correct or whether future discoveries lead in entirely different directions, the questions they raise about the nature of consciousness remain profound and transformative. In asking what existed before you were born, you discover that consciousness itself might be the most fundamental mystery of existence, the irreducible fact from which all other experiences emerge. And in that questioning, in that direct investigation into the nature of your own awareness, you begin to touch something that transcends the usual boundaries of scientific inquiry. This brings us to examine how contemplative traditions from around the world have long recognized consciousness as something far more fundamental than modern neuroscience typically acknowledges. For thousands of years, meditation practitioners have reported experiences that seem to align remarkably with some of the most speculative theories emerging from quantum consciousness research. Advanced meditators often describe states of awareness that feel timeless, boundless, and interconnected with all of existence. While these are subjective reports that cannot be verified through conventional scientific methods, their consistency across cultures and centuries suggests they might reveal something important about the deeper nature of consciousness itself. Recent neuroscience research has begun to examine what happens in the brains of long-term meditation practitioners during these profound states of awareness. The findings reveal patterns of neural activity that differ dramatically from ordinary waking consciousness. Brain networks associated with the sense of individual self show decreased activity, while areas linked to present moment awareness and emotional regulation display enhanced connectivity and coherence. These changes might not simply represent altered brain states, but could reflect access to aspects of consciousness that are normally filtered out by the focusing mechanisms of everyday awareness. When experienced meditators report feeling unity with all existence, they might be accessing the more fundamental, interconnected nature of consciousness that some quantum theories propose. Take a moment here to notice your own awareness as you listen to these words. Beneath all the concepts and ideas flowing through your mind, there's a simple presence, a knowing awareness that remains constant even as thoughts come and go. This awareness doesn't seem to be produced by thinking, but rather appears to be the space in which all thinking occurs. Ancient contemplative traditions have long recognized this pure awareness as our most fundamental nature, something that doesn't depend on thoughts, memories, or even the physical structures of the brain. The investigation of pure awareness leads us into territories where science and spirituality begin to converge in unexpected ways. While mainstream neuroscience continues to search for consciousness within the patterns of neural activity, some researchers are beginning to consider the possibility that awareness itself might be more fundamental than the brain processes through which it typically expresses itself. Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, a philosopher and former CERN physicist, has proposed what he calls analytical idealism, the view that consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality, and what we call physical matter is actually patterns of experience within universal consciousness. While this represents a minority position in contemporary science, it offers a framework for understanding how individual consciousness might be nested within larger patterns of cosmic awareness. This perspective suggests that your individual consciousness isn't generated by your brain, but rather is how universal consciousness expresses itself through the particular patterns of neural activity in your nervous system. It's similar to how a whirlpool is a pattern in water rather than something separate from the water itself. Your personal awareness might be a pattern in universal consciousness rather than something separate from the larger field of awareness. Consider how this might shift your understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. Rather than consciousness emerging from complex arrangements of unconscious particles, this view suggests that what we call matter might be patterns of experience within consciousness itself. The neurons in your brain, the atoms in your body, even the distant stars and galaxies might all be expressions of the same fundamental consciousness that manifests as your individual awareness. This brings us to explore one of the most intriguing intersections between quantum physics and consciousness research: the role of observation in quantum mechanics. In quantum experiments, the act of measurement appears to play a crucial role in determining the properties of particles and systems. Before measurement, quantum systems exist in states of superposition, exploring multiple possibilities simultaneously. The measurement process seems to collapse these possibilities into definite outcomes. This has led some researchers to speculate about whether consciousness might play a special role in quantum measurement, though it's important to note that this remains highly controversial and no scientific consensus exists about consciousness causing quantum collapse. Most physicists favour interpretations of quantum mechanics that don't require conscious observers to collapse wave functions. However, the persistent mysteries surrounding both consciousness and quantum measurement keep these questions alive in scientific discourse. What's particularly fascinating is how quantum mechanics reveals that the universe appears to be fundamentally probabilistic rather than deterministic. At the deepest levels of physical reality, particles don't have definite properties until they're measured. Instead, they exist in clouds of probability that only resolve into specific outcomes through the process of measurement or interaction with the environment. This probabilistic nature of quantum reality might offer insights into the flexibility and creativity that characterize conscious experience. Your thoughts don't follow rigid, predetermined patterns, but emerge through processes that involve genuine novelty and surprise. The quantum realm's inherent indeterminacy might provide the physical foundation for the spontaneity and freedom that seem intrinsic to conscious experience. As you contemplate these connections between consciousness and quantum mechanics, notice how they might inform your understanding of your own creative processes. When insights arise spontaneously in your mind, when solutions to problems appear seemingly from nowhere, when artistic inspiration strikes unexpectedly, you might be witnessing consciousness interfacing with the fundamental indeterminacy that characterizes reality at quantum levels. The exploration of quantum indeterminacy brings us to examine one of the most profound questions in consciousness research: the nature of free will. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, as some theories suggest, it might have access to the genuine openness and indeterminacy that quantum mechanics reveals at the foundation of physical reality. This doesn't mean that consciousness violates the laws of physics, but rather that it might operate through aspects of physics that involve genuine uncertainty and creative emergence rather than rigid determinism. The quantum realm demonstrates that the universe is not a clockwork machine where every outcome is predetermined, but rather a dynamic system where genuine novelty can emerge through the interplay of probability and measurement. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness might represent the universe's capacity for making creative choices among the possibilities that quantum mechanics reveals. This remains speculative and represents frontier thinking rather than established science, but it offers a framework for understanding how conscious intention and decision-making might interface with the fundamental structures of physical reality. Take a breath here and reflect on your own experience of making choices. When you decide what to focus on, how to respond to a situation, or what direction to take your life, where do these decisions come from? There's often a spontaneous creative quality to conscious choice that seems to emerge from levels deeper than rational analysis or predetermined patterns. This creative spontaneity might reflect consciousness interfacing with the quantum indeterminacy that underlies all physical processes. Your capacity for genuine choice, for bringing something new into existence through conscious intention, might be grounded in the fundamental openness that quantum mechanics reveals at the heart of reality itself. The investigation of consciousness and choice leads us to explore how contemplative practices might enhance our capacity for accessing these deeper levels of creative awareness. Meditation and other forms of spiritual practice have been shown to increase cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, and creative problem-solving abilities. These benefits might reflect enhanced access to the quantum levels of consciousness, where genuine novelty and spontaneity emerge. Advanced practitioners often report states of effortless creativity, where insights, solutions, and artistic expressions arise spontaneously without the usual mental effort. These states might represent consciousness operating more directly from quantum levels of awareness, where the rigid patterns of conditioned thinking give way to the fluid, probabilistic nature of quantum processes. Research on meditation and creativity has revealed that contemplative practice can enhance what neuroscientists call divergent thinking, to generate multiple creative solutions to problems. This enhancement might reflect improved access to the quantum levels of consciousness, where multiple possibilities coexist simultaneously before collapsing into specific insights or solutions. The practical implications extend far beyond individual creativity to questions about collective human potential. If consciousness truly operates through quantum processes that allow for non-local connections and creative emergence, then groups of people engaged in contemplative practice might be able to access forms of collective intelligence that transcend what individuals could achieve alone. Some research has explored whether meditation groups might have subtle effects on their surrounding communities, though these studies remain preliminary and controversial. The Global Consciousness Project, which monitors random number generators around the world, has reported subtle correlations between major global events and deviations from randomness, though the interpretation of these findings remains disputed within the scientific community. These investigations remain on the frontier of scientific inquiry and lack widespread consensus, but they illustrate how seriously some researchers are taking the possibility that consciousness might operate through principles that transcend individual brains. If consciousness truly is fundamental to reality, as some theories suggest, then collective human awareness might have subtle influences that extend beyond what conventional psychology would predict. As you consider these possibilities for collective consciousness, reflect on your own experiences of group coherence and shared awareness. Have you ever been part of a group where everyone seemed to be thinking similar thoughts or feeling connected in ways that went beyond ordinary communication? Musical ensembles, sports teams, and meditation groups often report experiences of synchrony that seem to transcend individual coordination. These experiences might offer glimpses into the more interconnected nature of consciousness that quantum theories propose. While they don't prove the existence of quantum effects in consciousness, they suggest that awareness might naturally tend toward coherence and connection when individuals align their attention and intention. The exploration of collective consciousness brings us to examine how these ideas might inform our understanding of human evolution and potential. If consciousness truly preceded biological life and represents a fundamental property of the cosmos, then the emergence of self-aware beings, like humans, might represent a crucial phase in the universe's ongoing process of awakening to itself. This perspective suggests that human consciousness isn't just a fortunate accident in an unconscious universe, but rather represents the cosmos developing the capacity for self-reflection and understanding. Every moment of awareness, every scientific discovery, every artistic creation might contribute to the universe's growing self-knowledge and self-expression. The implications extend to how we understand the purpose and meaning of individual existence. Rather than seeking meaning through external achievements or social recognition alone, you might find deeper fulfillment in consciously participating in this cosmic process of awakening. Your individual consciousness becomes a unique perspective through which the universe explores and understands itself. This doesn't diminish the importance of personal goals and relationships, but rather places them within a larger context of cosmic significance. Your growth in wisdom, compassion, and understanding contributes to the overall evolution of consciousness in the cosmos. Your capacity for love, creativity, and insight represents the universe expressing its deepest potentials through your individual awareness. Take a moment to breathe deeply and feel how this perspective might shift your understanding of your own life and experiences. Every challenge you face, every insight you discover, every moment of connection with others might be part of a larger story of consciousness evolving and awakening to its own nature. The recognition of individual consciousness as part of cosmic evolution brings us to explore how death and dying might fit into this larger picture. If consciousness truly transcends the boundaries of individual brains, then physical death might not represent the complete cessation of awareness, but rather a transition to different modes of consciousness organization. This remains highly speculative and represents philosophical possibility rather than proven scientific fact, but it offers a framework for understanding death as part of the natural flow of consciousness rather than its absolute termination. Just as a wave returns to the ocean without disappearing, but rather rejoining the larger body of water from which it arose, individual consciousness might return to the universal field of awareness from which it emerged. This perspective doesn't necessarily imply personal survival after death in any traditional sense of continuing individual identity and memory. Rather, it suggests that the fundamental capacity for consciousness itself might be more enduring than the specific biological structures through which it currently expresses itself. The investigation of consciousness and death leads us to examine the profound experiences that many people report at the end of life. Hospice workers and researchers have documented numerous cases of enhanced awareness, meaningful visions, and experiences of connection that occur as people approach death. These phenomena suggest that consciousness might become more rather than less accessible as the usual constraints of physical embodiment begin to dissolve. Some interpretations suggest that the dying process might involve a natural expansion of consciousness as the focusing mechanisms of the brain begin to relax their grip on awareness. Rather than consciousness fading as brain function declines, these experiences suggest that awareness might return to more fundamental levels that don't depend on normal neural processing. These ideas remain speculative and cannot be verified through conventional scientific methods, but they offer comfort and meaning to many people facing questions about mortality and the nature of existence. Whether or not individual consciousness persists after death. The recognition that awareness might be fundamental to reality provides a framework for understanding death as part of the natural flow of cosmic evolution rather than a complete ending. As you reflect on these questions about consciousness and mortality, notice how they might influence your relationship to your own life and the lives of those you love. If consciousness truly is woven into the fabric of reality itself, then every moment of awareness becomes precious not just for its individual significance, but for its participation in the larger symphony of cosmic consciousness. The exploration of consciousness and cosmic evolution brings us to consider how these insights might inform practical approaches to living with greater awareness and connection. If consciousness truly operates through quantum processes that transcend individual boundaries, then cultivating states of expanded awareness through meditation, contemplation, and mindful attention might enhance our capacity for accessing these deeper levels of connection. Contemplative practices offer practical methods for exploring consciousness directly rather than just theoretically. Through sustained attention to the nature of awareness itself, practitioners can investigate questions about the relationship between individual and universal consciousness through direct experience rather than conceptual analysis alone. The benefits of such practice extend beyond individual well-being to include enhanced empathy, creativity, and wisdom that can contribute to addressing collective human challenges. If consciousness truly is interconnected at fundamental levels, then individuals who cultivate expanded awareness might naturally become more effective agents of positive change in their communities and the world. This brings our exploration full circle to the question that began our journey: what existed before you were born? Through examining cutting-edge scientific theories, philosophical frameworks, and contemplative insights, we've discovered that this question opens doorways to understanding consciousness as something far more fundamental and mysterious than conventional materialist approaches suggest. The possibility that consciousness preceded biological life, that awareness might be woven into the fabric of reality itself, and that your individual consciousness might be a temporary focusing of something universal and eternal. These ideas invite you to see yourself and your place in the cosmos in radically new ways. Whether these scientific theories prove correct, or whether future discoveries lead in entirely different directions, the questions they raise about the nature of consciousness remain profound and transformative. In asking what existed before you were born, you discover that consciousness itself might be the most fundamental mystery of existence, the irreducible ground from which all experience emerges. As we bring this contemplation to a gentle close, take a moment to rest in the simple awareness that has been present throughout this entire exploration. This awareness doesn't belong to the past or future, but is timelessly present in every moment of conscious experience. It might be your most direct contact with whatever existed before you were born, and whatever will continue beyond the boundaries of individual existence. The scientific investigation of consciousness continues to evolve, opening new possibilities for understanding the nature of awareness and its relationship to the cosmos. These investigations remind us that consciousness itself might be the most remarkable phenomenon in the known universe. The capacity for the cosmos to know itself, to experience beauty and meaning, to ask profound questions about its own nature. In recognizing consciousness as potentially fundamental to reality, we discover that we are not isolated accidents in an unconscious universe, but rather integral expressions of cosmic awakening. Every moment of awareness, every question about existence, every experience of wonder and connection contributes to the ongoing story of consciousness, exploring its own infinite depths. And so, here we are, floating gently at the edges of everything we think we know about consciousness time, and the nature of existence itself. The questions we've been exploring don't offer tidy conclusions wrapped in neat scientific packages. Instead, they open doorways into mysteries that seem to deepen the more we peer into them. Perhaps that's exactly as it should be. The investigation of consciousness, whether through the precise instruments of neuroscience or the quiet depths of contemplative inquiry, reveals that awareness itself might be far stranger and more wonderful than our everyday experience suggests. We've discovered that the simple fact of being conscious, of having subjective experiences at all, remains one of the most profound puzzles in all of science and philosophy. Take a slow breath here and notice something remarkable. Throughout this entire journey, through quantum theories, cosmic evolution, and the mysteries of pre-life consciousness, there's been one constant presence that we've barely mentioned directly. It's the awareness that has been listening, contemplating, understanding these ideas. This awareness doesn't seem to be produced by the concepts we've been discussing. Rather, it's the unchanging backdrop against which all these thoughts and insights have appeared and dissolved. This pure awareness, this simple, knowing presence that makes all experience possible, might be your most direct contact with whatever preceded your biological existence. It doesn't feel created or constructed. It simply is, timelessly present, the witness of all changing experience. When you recognize this awareness as your most fundamental nature, the question of what existed before you were born takes on entirely new dimensions. Rather than searching for consciousness in the complexity of neural networks or the exotic realms of quantum mechanics, you might discover it as the irreducible ground of your own immediate experience. This recognition doesn't require advanced degrees in physics or years of meditation practice. It's as close as your next breath, as intimate as the knowing that you exist in this very moment. The scientific theories we've explored, fascinating as they are, remain maps rather than territories. They point towards something profound about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the cosmos, but they cannot capture the living reality of awareness itself. That can only be known directly, intimately, through the miracle of being conscious in this very moment. As you settle deeper into this recognition, you might begin to sense how the boundaries between inner and outer, self and cosmos, individual and universal consciousness start to dissolve. Not because you're thinking about interconnection, but because you're recognizing the awareness that was never actually separate from anything else. This awareness has no edges, no beginning, no end. It simply is the knowing presence in which all experience unfolds. The implications ripple outward, like waves on an infinite ocean. If this awareness truly represents your deepest nature, then you were never really born in any ultimate sense, and you will never truly die. What you most fundamentally are doesn't depend on the temporary, biological structures through which it currently expresses itself. The personality, memories, and individual characteristics you identify with are like waves on the surface of an ocean that has no bottom, no shore, no beginning. This understanding transforms every aspect of human existence. The love you feel for others becomes recognition of the same awareness, looking out through different eyes. The beauty you perceive in nature reflects the cosmos, knowing itself through your individual perspective. The insights that arise in science and philosophy represent the universe exploring its own infinite depths through countless conscious beings. Even suffering and difficulty take on new meaning within this expanded perspective. The challenges you face, the losses you endure, the confusion and uncertainty that are part of human existence, all become movements within consciousness rather than threats to it. Like clouds passing through an endless sky, these experiences arise and dissolve within the vast space of awareness that remains eternally undisturbed. This doesn't diminish the reality of human pain or the importance of addressing suffering in practical ways. Rather, it provides a context that can hold both the difficulties of existence and the recognition that what you most fundamentally are remains untouched by any temporary experience. You are the sky in which all weather patterns appear, the ocean in which all waves rise and fall, the awareness in which all experiences unfold. The scientific quest to understand consciousness continues to push against the boundaries of human knowledge, revealing ever deeper mysteries about the nature of mind and reality. Future discoveries may confirm some of the theories we have explored, refute others, or lead in directions we cannot currently imagine. But regardless of how our scientific understanding evolves, the direct recognition of consciousness as your fundamental nature remains immediately accessible in every moment. This recognition doesn't depend on believing in particular theories about quantum mechanics or cosmic evolution, though such theories can serve as helpful pointers toward the mystery of awareness itself. What matters is the direct investigation of consciousness through your own immediate experience. When you look for the one who is aware, when you search for the boundaries of this knowing presence, when you try to find where consciousness begins or ends, what do you discover? Most people find that awareness itself cannot be located or contained within any particular boundaries. It's not inside your head or outside in the world, not limited to the present moment or extended through time, not individual or universal, but somehow prior to all such divisions. It's the open space of knowing in which all experiences appear, including the experience of having a body, thoughts, emotions, and a sense of individual identity. As you rest in this recognition, you might begin to understand why so many contemplative traditions have pointed toward consciousness as the ultimate reality. Not because they were promoting particular beliefs or doctrines, but because they discovered through direct investigation that awareness itself is what we most fundamentally are. All other experiences come and go, but this knowing presence remains constant, unchanging, eternally present. The integration of this understanding into daily life doesn't require withdrawing from the world or abandoning practical responsibilities. Instead, it provides a foundation of peace and clarity that can inform every aspect of human existence. When you know yourself as the awareness in which all experiences appear, you can engage fully with life while remaining rooted in something that transcends the ups and downs of temporary circumstances. This perspective naturally gives rise to what we might call cosmic compassion. When you recognize the same awareness looking out through every conscious being, how could you not feel deep empathy for the struggles and joys of others? When you understand yourself as the cosmos knowing itself through individual perspective, how could you not feel profound responsibility for the well-being of the whole? The questions about pre-life consciousness that began our exploration have led us to the recognition that consciousness itself might never have been born and might never die. What existed before you were born was the same awareness that exists right now, the same knowing presence that will continue regardless of what happens to any particular biological form. You are that eternal awareness, temporarily focused through the unique lens of individual human experience. This recognition doesn't answer all the mysteries we've explored, but it reveals them as expressions of something even more fundamental. The strange behaviours of quantum particles, The fine-tuning of cosmic constants, the emergence of life and intelligence, the experiences reported during near-death states, the insights that arise in meditation, all become movements within the infinite creativity of consciousness, exploring its own nature. As we approach the end of this gentle journey together, take a moment to notice how these ideas have been received. Not by your thinking mind, which has been busy analysing and categorising concepts, but by the aware presence that has been quietly witnessing this entire exploration. This awareness doesn't accumulate knowledge like a computer storing data. Instead, it recognises truth through a kind of immediate knowing that transcends conceptual understanding. This knowing doesn't depend on memory or learning in the ordinary sense. It's more like consciousness recognising its own nature, awareness becoming aware of itself. When profound insights arise, they often feel less like discovering something new and more like remembering something you've always known but had temporarily forgotten. Perhaps this is what wisdom traditions mean when they speak of awakening or enlightenment. Not the acquisition of exotic knowledge or special experiences, but the simple recognition of what you have always been. The awareness that is reading these words right now, that has been present throughout your entire life, that witnesses all coming and going while itself remaining unchanged. The scientific investigation of consciousness, despite all its sophistication and complexity, ultimately points back to this simple recognition. Whether through quantum theories or neuroscience research, through studies of meditation or investigations of near-death experiences, science keeps encountering the mystery of subjective experience, the hard problem of consciousness, the irreducible fact of awareness itself. And here you are, not as a problem to be solved, but as the living reality that science is trying to understand. You are consciousness investigating itself, awareness exploring its own nature through the temporary lens of individual human experience. Every question you ask about the nature of mind and reality is the cosmos inquiring into its own deepest secrets. This brings a profound sense of participation in something infinitely larger than individual existence, while simultaneously revealing your most intimate nature as that larger reality itself. You are not in the universe. The universe is appearing within the space of your own awareness. You're not separate from consciousness. Consciousness is what you most fundamentally are. As these contemplations settle into the depths of understanding, you might notice a natural sense of coming home, of arriving at something you never actually left. This isn't the end of inquiry, but rather its flowering into direct recognition. The questions that began our journey remain alive and vital, not as problem-seeking solutions, but as expressions of consciousness delighting in its own infinite mystery. The wonder you feel when contemplating the vastness of space, the curiosity that drives scientific discovery, the love that connects you to others, the peace that emerges in moments of deep stillness, all arise within, and as the same awareness that existed before the first star was born, and will remain when the last galaxy fades into darkness. This awareness is what you are, what you have always been, what you will always be. It needs no improvement, seeks no completion, lacks nothing essential. Yet it expresses itself through countless forms of seeking, learning, growing and exploring, including the very investigation we've been engaged in together. From this perspective, every moment of existence becomes an opportunity for consciousness to know itself more fully through your unique individual experience. Every breath you take, every thought that arises, every feeling that moves through you, every insight that dawns in your understanding becomes a celebration of awareness, recognizing its own infinite nature. The questions we've explored about pre-life consciousness, quantum mechanics, and the nature of reality remain fascinating and important. They push the boundaries of human knowledge and open possibilities we could never have imagined. But perhaps their deepest value lies not in the answers they might eventually provide, but in the way they point us back to the mystery of our own immediate experience of being conscious. And so, as we gently conclude this exploration together, we return to where we began, but with deeper appreciation for the miracle of awareness itself. The consciousness that existed before you were born is the same consciousness that will continue after this individual expression has returned to its source. You are that eternal awareness, playing temporarily at being human, celebrating the cosmic joy of existence through every moment of your individual life. Take one more slow, deep breath and feel yourself settling into this recognition. Rest in the simple knowing of your own existence, the immediate awareness that needs no explanation, no justification, no improvement. This is your true home, your deepest identity, your most fundamental nature. This is what existed before you were born, what exists now, and what will continue eternally. Thank you for joining me in this gentle exploration of consciousness and cosmos. May you carry this recognition lightly, like a secret smile that colours every experience with wonder. Until we meet again in the infinite space of awareness, rest well in the mystery of your own eternal nature. The questions continue, the wonder deepens, and consciousness celebrates its own infinite creativity through every moment of your precious human existence. This is the greatest discovery of all, hidden in plain sight, waiting patiently for recognition in the simple miracle of being aware, right here, right now, always. As we drift toward the gentle conclusion of this contemplative journey, let's explore one final territory where the mysteries of consciousness meet the practical realities of human existence. Throughout our exploration, we've touched upon consciousness as something potentially fundamental to reality itself. But what might this mean for how we actually live day to day? Consider this curious paradox. If awareness truly transcends the boundaries we typically assign to it, why do we so often feel isolated, separate, cut off from the deeper currents of existence? It's as though we're fish who have forgotten they live in water, surrounded by the very element we're searching for, yet somehow unable to recognize its presence. This brings us to examine what researchers call the meditation paradox. Neuroscientist Judson Brewer has documented how experienced meditators show decreased activity in brain regions associated with self-referential thinking, yet they report enhanced rather than diminished self-awareness. It's as if the quieting of mental chatter allows something deeper to emerge into recognition. The implications extend far beyond individual practice. Some interpretations suggest that when groups of people engage in contemplative practices together, subtle forms of coherence might emerge that transcend what we'd expect from isolated individuals. While this remains speculative and lacks scientific consensus, preliminary research has explored whether collective meditation might correlate with measurable changes in community well-being. Take a moment to breathe here and consider your own experiences of shared silence or group contemplation. Have you ever noticed how a room full of people in quiet reflection can feel different from a room full of people lost in individual thoughts? There's something about collective presence that seems to amplify the qualities of awareness itself. This observation leads us into territories where ancient wisdom traditions and modern complexity science begin to find unexpected resonances. Systems theorists have discovered that complex networks often exhibit what they call emergent properties, characteristics that arise from the interactions between components but cannot be reduced to the properties of individual parts. Some researchers have wondered whether consciousness might exhibit similar emergent properties when individual awareness becomes coherent with larger patterns. This is purely speculative, not established science, but it offers a framework for understanding how individual contemplative practice might contribute to broader shifts in collective human awareness. The investigation of collective consciousness phenomena remains controversial within mainstream science, but it illustrates how seriously some researchers are taking the possibility that consciousness might operate through principles we don't yet fully understand. The Global Consciousness Project, which we touched upon earlier, represents one attempt to investigate whether human consciousness might have subtle effects that extend beyond individual brains. While the interpretation of such research remains disputed, it points toward questions that deserve serious consideration. If consciousness truly is as fundamental to reality as some theories suggest, then the cultivation of expanded awareness through contemplative practice might have implications that extend far beyond personal well-being. As you reflect on these possibilities, notice how they might inform your understanding of your own contemplative experiences. Those moments of deep stillness, expanded awareness, or profound interconnection might not be merely subjective states, but could represent access to more fundamental aspects of consciousness that are normally filtered out by the focusing mechanisms of everyday awareness. The practical applications of consciousness research continue to expand into areas that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Researchers are now investigating how contemplative practices might enhance everything from immune function to creative problem solving to social cohesion. While the mechanisms remain mysterious, the effects appear to be measurable and reproducible across diverse populations. Dr. Richard Davidson's research at the University of Wisconsin has shown that meditation practice can literally reshape the brain, increasing grey matter in areas associated with attention and emotional regulation, while reducing activity in regions linked to stress and anxiety. These aren't temporary states that disappear when practice ends, but lasting structural changes that persist over time. The implications suggest that consciousness might be far more plastic and responsive than we previously imagined. Rather than being fixed by genetics or early childhood experiences, awareness itself appears capable of ongoing development and refinement throughout life. This neuroplasticity extends even into advanced age, suggesting that the cultivation of consciousness might be a lifelong journey of discovery and growth. Consider how this might relate to your own capacity for growth and transformation. Every moment of mindful awareness, every instant of present moment attention, might be literally rewiring your brain in ways that enhance your capacity for peace, clarity, and compassion. The consciousness that existed before you were born might be expressing its infinite potential through your individual practice and development. The exploration of consciousness development brings us to examine what contemplatives have long called stages or levels of awareness. While these frameworks remain largely subjective and lack scientific consensus, they point toward the possibility that consciousness itself might have depths and dimensions that can be explored through sustained practice and inquiry. Advanced practitioners across various traditions often report similar phenomena. the dissolution of subject-object boundaries, direct knowing that transcends conceptual understanding, experiences of unity that feel more real than ordinary reality. While these remain subjective reports that cannot be verified through conventional scientific methods, their consistency across cultures and centuries suggests they might reveal something important about the nature of consciousness itself. Dr. Ken Wilber and other integral theorists have attempted to map these reported stages of consciousness development, though it's important to note that such maps remain speculative frameworks rather than proven scientific models. They suggest that consciousness might naturally tend toward greater complexity, integration, and inclusiveness when given the right conditions for development. Take a breath here and reflect on your own journey of awareness. Have you noticed changes in your perspective over the years that seem to involve more than just accumulating knowledge or experience? Perhaps moments where your entire way of seeing reality shifted, where boundaries you hadn't even known existed suddenly dissolved, where understanding arose that felt deeper than anything you could have reasoned your way to. These shifts in perspective might represent consciousness recognizing its own deeper nature through your individual development. The awareness that was present before your birth might be gradually awakening to itself through the unique lens of your human experience, revealing depths and possibilities that were always present but not previously accessible. The investigation of consciousness development intersects with research on what psychologists call post-conventional stages of human growth. These involve ways of understanding self and world that transcend the conventional boundaries of individual identity, moving toward increasingly inclusive and interconnected perspectives. While mainstream psychology remains cautious about claims regarding higher stages of human development, some researchers have found correlations between contemplative practice and enhanced moral reasoning, increased empathy, and greater capacity for systems thinking. These changes might reflect access to aspects of consciousness that naturally tend toward greater integration and compassion. The practical implications ripple outward into every area of human existence. If consciousness truly has the capacity for ongoing development throughout life, then personal growth becomes not just a psychological process, but a fundamental expression of consciousness exploring its own infinite potential. Your individual journey of awakening becomes part of the cosmos awakening to itself. This perspective transforms how we understand the purpose and meaning of individual existence. Rather than seeking fulfillment through external achievements alone, you might find deeper satisfaction in consciously participating in consciousness's ongoing exploration of its own nature. Every insight you discover, every moment of expanded awareness, every increase in wisdom or compassion contributes to this larger process of cosmic awakening. The investigation of individual consciousness development naturally leads us to consider how these human evolution, some might inform our understanding of collective researchers, have proposed that humanity as a species might be undergoing a transition toward more integrated forms of consciousness. Though this remains speculative and lacks scientific consensus, evolutionary biologist David Sloan Wilson has explored how cultural evolution might favour groups that develop more cooperative and inclusive forms of social organisation. While he approaches this from a purely biological perspective, some interpretations suggest that the development of expanded consciousness in individuals might contribute to these larger evolutionary processes. The possibility that human consciousness is evolving toward greater integration and interconnectedness offers hope for addressing the complex challenges facing our species. Climate change, social inequality, technological disruption, and other global issues might require forms of collective intelligence and cooperation that transcend traditional boundaries of nation culture and ideology. If consciousness truly operates through interconnected principles, as some theories suggest, then the cultivation of expanded awareness through contemplative practice might naturally enhance our capacity for addressing these collective challenges. This doesn't guarantee solutions, but it suggests that the development of consciousness might be essential for navigating the complexities of our interconnected world. As you contemplate these possibilities for human evolution, consider how your own growth in awareness might contribute to larger patterns of positive change. The peace you cultivate through contemplative practice, the compassion that arises from recognizing interconnection, the wisdom that emerges from direct inquiry into consciousness itself, all become contributions to humanity's ongoing development. The exploration of consciousness evolution brings us to examine one of the most profound questions facing our species. How do we live wisely in an age of unprecedented technological power? The same scientific advances that have revealed the mysteries of consciousness have also given us capabilities that our ancestors could never have imagined. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, quantum computing, and other emerging technologies raise fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and what it means to be human. As we develop machines that can process information in ways that sometimes exceed human capabilities, we're forced to confront what is truly unique about conscious experience. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness itself might be the irreducible essence of what makes human existence meaningful. While machines can process information and solve problems, the subjective experience of being aware, of feeling wonder and love and connection, might represent something that cannot be replicated through purely computational means. This doesn't diminish the remarkable achievements of artificial intelligence, but it suggests that consciousness might involve principles that transcend information processing alone. The direct, immediate experience of being aware might be grounded in aspects of reality that we're only beginning to understand through quantum consciousness, theories and related research. Take a moment to notice the quality of your own awareness right now. Beneath all the concepts and ideas we've been exploring, there's a simple presence, a knowing awareness that makes all experience possible. This awareness doesn't feel computed or constructed. It simply is timelessly present, the unchanging witness of all changing experience. This recognition of awareness as something irreducible and immediate might be crucial as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of technological advancement. Rather than seeing consciousness as something to be replicated or replaced, we might recognize it as the foundation from which all meaningful engagement with technology must emerge. The integration of contemplative wisdom with technological capability offers possibilities for human flourishing that neither domain could achieve alone. Technology can extend our reach and ensure our capabilities, while contemplative practice can help ensure these capabilities are guided by wisdom, compassion, and deep understanding of interconnection. Some researchers have begun exploring how contemplative practices might be integrated with technological development to ensure that advances in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and other fields serve the genuine well-being of all life. This represents a new frontier where ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science collaborate in addressing humanity's greatest challenges. The investigation of consciousness and technology brings us to consider how these insights might inform our approach to education and human development. If consciousness truly has the capacity for ongoing growth throughout life, then educational systems might need to evolve beyond the transmission of information to include the cultivation of awareness itself. Contemplative education programs are beginning to emerge that integrate mindfulness practices with traditional academic subjects. Early research suggests that such approaches might enhance not only learning outcomes, but also emotional regulation, social skills, and overall well-being. Students learn not just what to think, but how to be present with whatever they're thinking about. The implications extend beyond formal education to lifelong learning and development. If consciousness itself can be cultivated and refined, then every individual has the potential for continued growth in wisdom, compassion, and understanding throughout their entire lifespan. The awareness that existed before your birth continues to express its infinite potential through your ongoing development. Consider how this might transform your own approach to learning and growth. Rather than seeing education as something that happens during specific periods of life, you might recognize every experience as an opportunity for consciousness to deepen its understanding of itself. Every challenge becomes a chance for wisdom to emerge, every relationship an opportunity for compassion to develop, every moment an invitation for awareness to recognize its own nature more fully. The exploration of contemplative education naturally leads us to examine how these insights might inform our understanding of healing and wellness. Traditional medical models focus primarily on treating symptoms and diseases, but emerging approaches are beginning to recognize consciousness itself as a crucial factor in health and healing. Research on the mind-body connection has revealed that contemplative practices can have measurable effects on everything from immune function to cardiovascular health to pain perception. While the mechanisms remain mysterious, the evidence suggests that the cultivation of expanded awareness might be one of the most powerful tools available for promoting physical and emotional well-being. This doesn't mean that consciousness can cure all diseases or that medical treatment should be replaced by meditation alone. Rather, it suggests that the integration of contemplative practices with conventional medical care might offer approaches to healing that address the whole person rather than just isolated symptoms. Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's development of mindfulness-based stress reduction represents one example of how contemplative practices can be integrated with medical treatment. Thousands of studies have now documented the effectiveness of mindfulness approaches for conditions ranging from chronic pain to anxiety to immune dysfunction. The success of such approaches might reflect the fact that consciousness and physical health are more intimately connected than we previously understood. If awareness truly is fundamental to reality, as some theories suggest, then the cultivation of consciousness might naturally promote the conditions that support optimal health and healing. Take a breath here and notice how your own awareness relates to your physical experience right now. As you pay attention to your body, to your breathing, to the sensations of sitting or lying down, you might notice how consciousness and physicality seem to be different aspects of the same underlying reality rather than separate phenomena. This intimate connection between consciousness and embodiment suggests that the cultivation of awareness through contemplative practice might be one of the most natural and effective approaches to promoting overall well-being. Rather than seeing the body as something to be controlled or manipulated, you might recognize it as a vehicle through which consciousness explores and expresses itself. The investigation of consciousness and healing brings us to explore how these insights might inform our understanding of aging and the later stages of life. Conventional approaches to aging often focus on decline and loss, but emerging research suggests that the cultivation of consciousness might actually become easier and more natural as we grow older. Many contemplative traditions have long recognized that the later stages of life offer unique opportunities for spiritual development. As the concerns of career building and family raising begin to recede, space opens for deeper inquiry into the nature of existence itself. The consciousness that existed before birth might become more accessible as the structures of individual identity begin to soften. Research on successful aging has begun to identify factors that contribute to well-being in later life, and many of these involve qualities that are naturally cultivated through contemplative practice: acceptance, wisdom, gratitude, and the ability to find meaning in present moment experience rather than future achievements. The implications suggest that aging might not represent decline, but rather ripening, a natural process through which consciousness matures and deepens its understanding of itself. The challenges that come with aging, including physical limitations and the approach of death, might serve as powerful teachers that help awareness recognize its more fundamental nature. Consider how this perspective might transform your own relationship to aging and mortality. Rather than seeing these as threats to be avoided or denied, you might recognize them as natural aspects of consciousness, exploring the full spectrum of existence. Every stage of life becomes an opportunity for awareness to discover new depths of its own nature. The exploration of consciousness and aging naturally brings us back to the question of death and what might lie beyond the boundaries of individual existence. Throughout our journey, we've touched upon various interpretations of what it might mean for consciousness to transcend the apparent limits of biological life. While these remain speculative possibilities rather than proven scientific facts, they offer frameworks for understanding death as part of the natural flow of consciousness rather than its absolute termination. The awareness that you most fundamentally are might not be created by your brain, but rather expressed through it. Like a song that can be played on different instruments while maintaining its essential identity, this perspective doesn't necessarily imply personal survival after death in any conventional sense, but it suggests that the fundamental capacity for consciousness itself might be more enduring than the temporary biological structures through which it currently manifests. What existed before you were born continues to exist now and might continue in some form beyond the dissolution of individual identity. The recognition that consciousness might transcend individual boundaries offers profound implications for how we understand the meaning and purpose of human existence. Rather than seeing life as a brief interval between two eternities of non-existence, we might recognize it as a temporary focusing of eternal awareness, a unique opportunity for consciousness to explore itself through individual perspective. This understanding naturally gives rise to what we might call cosmic responsibility. If consciousness truly is interconnected at fundamental levels, then every thought, emotion, and action becomes part of the larger tapestry of awareness exploring its own nature. The love you feel, the wisdom you cultivate, the compassion you express all contribute to the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. Take a moment to breathe deeply and feel how this recognition might settle into your understanding. The consciousness reading these words right now is the same awareness that has been present throughout this entire exploration, the same knowing presence that has witnessed every experience of your life. This awareness doesn't feel temporary or constructed. It simply is timelessly present, the eternal ground from which all experience emerges. As we approach the gentle conclusion of our journey together, we return once more to the simple recognition that has been present all along. The question of what existed before you were born has led us through territories of quantum mechanics and cosmic evolution, through explorations of near-death experiences and contemplative states, through investigations of collective consciousness and human potential. Yet perhaps the most profound discovery has been the recognition that consciousness itself remains an immediate, intimate mystery that cannot be fully captured by any theory or explanation. The awareness that makes all experience possible is closer than close, more fundamental than any concept we could form about it, more real than any reality we could construct. Thank you for joining me on this contemplative journey through the deepest questions of existence. The scientific exploration of pre-life consciousness continues to evolve, pushing against the boundaries of our understanding, while revealing that awareness itself may be far more fundamental than we ever imagined. These investigations remain at the frontiers of human knowledge, reminding us that consciousness might not emerge from complexity, but rather express itself through it. Whether quantum theories of consciousness prove correct, whether panpsychism finds scientific validation, or whether future discoveries lead us in entirely different directions, the questions we've explored together invite you to see yourself as part of something infinitely larger. You are not an isolated accident in an unconscious universe, but rather consciousness itself, temporarily focused through the unique lens of human experience, participating in the cosmos's ongoing journey of self-discovery. The awareness that has been present throughout this exploration, the knowing that makes all experience possible, might be your most direct contact with whatever existed before birth, and what continues beyond the boundaries of individual existence. This recognition doesn't require believing in any particular theory, only the willingness to investigate the nature of your own immediate experience of being aware. Sleep well, knowing that every moment of consciousness contributes to the universe's endless exploration of its own infinite mystery. Until we meet again in the vast space of awareness, rest peacefully in the recognition that what you most fundamentally are has always been and will always be. You most fundamentally are has always been and will always be.